Hello and welcome to another video. And this time we're gonna be taking a look at a specific version of Aura, more concretely or more specifically, the Ego Revolter Aura, also known as the Shock Aura or the Ranger Aura. Is this one right here on the screen, and we're gonna basically talk about her accessories, her skills, her awakening levels, her runes, and my special recommendations for her relic set, relic attributes, enhancements, and themes and compositions, as well as the arc light. So yeah, let's start with the basic stuff. We can see here that she's a ranger. That means that she's a damage dealer. She's specialized on area of effect damage, shock damage, and multi-move, as well as being a green category character means that counters a specific type of enemies, but also gets countered by another. With this, we basically get the role, and we can go to the basic attributes. We can see that she has a C on magical defense, which is very, very bad. That means that she is very vulnerable to any magical attack, like facing a normal mage, like Mari, for example, will be incredibly dangerous to her. And we see that she has triple Bs, one for health, another B on physical defense, and another on speed. Uh, the majority of rangers have B on HP, so it's not anything unusual, but you will have to take that into consideration when playing Aura into you know, very offensive enemies because she might get deleted very soon on the battlefield. The B on physical defense, okay, is average. It's not good, it's not bad. Uh, Similar to the magical defense stat, take care and be careful when you play Aura. The moment you don't have a tank or a healer ready to help her, she might get deleted. And beyond speed, that means that she is not really that fast, but she is not slow. Uh, for modes like the story mode, expedition, and so, you're gonna be fine with that speed. But if you want to go to the multiplayer, like the normal arena mode or the multiplayer on real time, you're gonna struggle a lot because the meta is the characters with S on speed. But we can see that she has one S on attack, which is really nice. A ranger with S on attack, that means she has potential for maybe some one shots, and that is a very important part on a ranger, because if the ranger cannot provide good attack, the ranger is usually useless. So with the basic attributes out of the way, we're gonna go to the accessories, and we can see here that at tier level 3 she obtains 20% assistance rate, at tier 6 10% more attack, and tier 9 10% more critical chance, which is really nice. The assistance rate is gonna help her attack out of her turn. The extra attack, in case she doesn't crit, she's still gonna hit hard, and the critical chance, to give her a chance of landing really hard blows to the enemies. Now, the skill set. Here I'm gonna try to read it and then uh, try to explain it in a very simple way so everyone can understand this character and this, skill set. The first is the basic attack, the hunting shot. She will deal damage equal to a certain percentage of her own attack. That depends on the level, but from level 4 and on, she will also have a chance of inflicting shock on the enemy for 2 rounds. And we saw earlier that she's a shock team member, so no wonder why she can put shock here. And considering this is the attack that she's gonna throw when she deals any kind of assist attack, having the chance of proccing shock on an assist attack is nice because she can put the shock on a target that already has shock, and when an enemy with shock already gets attacked and gets inflicted with shock again, it triggers it. So she can trigger shock with an assist rate thanks to this upgrade at level 4. Now the first active skill, the double arrow, this is a really nice skill, especially for use being a normal skill and not an ultimate skill. She's gonna deal 2 hits and dealing certain percentage of her own attack as damage. In this case is 90% at max level. Each hit with critical will immediately trigger the target shock. That means that when she achieves landing a critical hit on the enemy, it's gonna trigger shock if the enemy has shock. Also, if the target dies from the first arrow, redirects the attack to the target with the lowest health in the battlefield. That means that, for example, if you want to kill someone that is very low on HP with this skill and the enemy dies with the first arrow, the second arrow is going to get redirected to another enemy, so you don't lose that extra DPS. Also, after using the skill, she gains a 100% basic chance or base chance to inflict stun in the enemy target for 1 round. That means that she can basically make one enemy lose their turn unless they get purified by a healer or something like that. So you have a chance of controlling the enemy with a basic attack that at level 5 gets cooldown reduced and you will have a cooldown of 1 round. And if you combine this later on with something like Pestonia or a Bermariset, you can basically spam the double arrows, which means you can basically spam the stun on the enemies. Now, the passive skill, the Lightning Mastery. Each time the enemy shock triggers, our turn meter gets boosted by 5%, and well, basically that means that very similar to, for example, what Nigredo does with her gaze effect, when the enemy shock gets triggered by either inflicting shock on a target that already had shock, or when the enemies get a turn and they move and they get shock, she's gonna move. And normally you're gonna be facing like 4 or 5 enemies at a time. So when shock triggers and you were able to put shock on like 2 or 3 enemies or so, she's gonna be getting a turn meter boost, not of 5%, but it's gonna be like 10 or 15 or 20%. So she's basically gonna she's an B speed character, but when you're on the battlefield, if you manage to put shock on multiple enemies and they do not get rid of that by purifying the status effect, you're gonna be looking at your aura speeding up on the battlefield. She's gonna be at least looking like a character with A on speed. So the fact that she has B on speed and moves that fast, and you're gonna see it on the next part of the guide, on the practical part, the other video, um, is to balance her, okay? But we can get around that in a little bit later, and I'm gonna tell you how to basically make her a little bit broken. But yeah. Also, when landing a critical hit on a target with shock, gains a 25% base chance to inflict stun on the target for 1 round. That means that even when her double arrow is on cooldown, she can stun the enemy with the hunting shock, either with the basic attack, or when she throws the basic attack on an assist attack, or with the thunder arrow as the ultimate. She will have always a chance of stunning the enemy as long as the enemy already has, shock, and she lands a critical hit, which is not as hard as it sounds at this moment, but more of that later on. Also, Aura critical chance increases by 30% against targets with shock. So even if Aura doesn't have any crit on your account, but you're attacking a character with the debuff of shock, she will immediately gain 30% critical chance. Also, Aura critical damage increases by 30% against targets with shock. So she deals even more critical damage than usual. And if you have her 5 stars at least, when she lands a critical hit on targets with shock, she will have 50% basic chance of inflicting stun on the enemy instead of 25%. And that is huge. Like, that is probably the best upgrade star on Aura, on this Aura specifically. Why? Because that will apply to every attack of Aura. The hunting shot, the double arrow, the thunder arrow, or the assist attacks. And characters like Victim that can stun multiple enemies at once in a single turn, in a single move, also has only 50% basic chance. And it's on things like the ultimate or when he dies. And Aura has that on every attack if you have her 5 stars. So that is way too broken if you have the 5 stars. In my case, I do not have the 5 stars, but if you want to upgrade this character, or you're thinking about if she's worth it or if she's not worth the investment, if you don't have a ranger like Mate Albedo or Sashi, then yeah, this aura is absolutely worth it. And now the ultimate skill, the Thunder Arrow. It's an area of effect attack with shock also capabilities. She's gonna shoot an arrow that summons lightning, attacking the target and the targets to the left and right. So this attacks 3 targets, the main target that you're gonna aim and the ones at the sides of your main target. It's gonna deal certain amount of damage to the primary target and lower damage to the other targets, the secondary targets. That increases with level. Max damage is gonna be 220% of our attack as damage to the primary target, and the secondary targets are gonna receive 160% attack as damage. So you have area of effect damage to 3 enemies, and hitting them gives you 50% basic chance to inflict shock for 2 rounds on all the enemies. But if this aura lands a critical hit, she's gonna have a 100% fixed chance to inflict shock on all the targets that she crits for 2 rounds. And after using this skill, it's gonna trigger shock effects on the primary target. And if the enemy didn't have any shock effect, this is not gonna trigger, and it's the 4 stars upgrade. So if you have Aura 3 stars, she is basically gonna have these 3 points, but not this one. So she's not gonna trigger shock. But if she's 4 stars, after she attacks and inflicts shock on the enemy, she's gonna trigger shock. But if the enemy didn't got shocked because they have debuff immunity or anything like that, this is gonna be nullified. So it's a heavy hit because it's 220% damage at max level. It's a heavy hit that does area of effect damage, puts shock on the enemy, and if she crits, that has a big chance of critting on the enemy. She also has a chance of, triggering shock that is also gonna trigger her passive skill that is gonna increase her on tour meter. And she also has a captain skill. When she is assigned as the captain of the team, every time the enemy shock triggers, the damage they take increases by 25%. So this indirectly is gonna be increasing all your shock damage and all the skills of Aura when she attacks the enemies. Now, the Arclight, I am the master of my fate. Sorry for that noise. I just tripped on something. We can see that Aura gets her own attack and health increased by a flat amount, but she also gains critical chance with this Arclight, 8% at 1 star. And the exclusive effect is that every 6 times that shock is triggered, she's gonna have increased critical damage by 5% up to 25%. That is at 1 star, and that only increases the more stars you get. So you can already see that this Arclight is absolutely worth it, and I will not tell you to replace it because there is no better Arclight for Aura than her own Arclight. But if you were in a position where you do not have this Arclight and you needed to put one, I will either go with Boost Morale or Terribly Sorry. Terribly Sorry increases the critical damage and makes Aura enter into stealth mode, basically invisibility that helps her not get targeted by single target attacks, and increases her crit during her first attack. So that will help you to, land a very heavy critical hit on her first move. And Boost Morale basically gives her a tour meter boost every time she launches an assist, a chase, or a counter, and increases her assist rate. And because she already has assist rate, this is gonna be, making synergy with that. So you're gonna have Aura with more assist rate and more tour meter boost. And that is nice, but it is not comparable with her Arclight. Because if we make the math, she's gaining 10% critical chance with the accessories. Then she's gaining extra 30% critical chance when she attacks enemies with shock. That is a total of 40% critical chance. Plus her Arclight at 1 star is 8% more critical chance. That is a total of 48% critical chance against enemies with shock. And 18% critical chance against all of the other enemies. So she is almost on the 50% critical chance, just like naturally having her own stuff level up, not even having any special relic or awakening level. And now we're gonna go to the awakening levels. As you can see here, I don't have awakening levels on her, she's not one of my main characters or anything like that, so that's exactly why. But if I were to, tell you what to upgrade on her, it will be something like this. And this is the main example. As the first gem that also is the same gem at level 20 because they're the same form, I would recommend you this one, the energy gem attack, the one that increases it by a percentage. Because all the other one gives you either something like health or magical defense or physical defense and so. Attack will help you a lot in the case that Aura doesn't crit. So even if she doesn't crit, she still deals high damage. Or when shock triggers, shock is gonna be increased because the damage from the shock debuff directly scales from the attack values of the character that inflicted the shock debuff. In this case, it's gonna be Aura. So the more attack Aura has, the higher damage shock is gonna deal. Now for the second gem, the round gem that is also at level 25, I would recommend you either the Mighty Gem Crit or the Mighty Gem Critical Damage. And they do exactly what you think they do. Critical damage increases the critical damage and the crit one increases the critical chance. If you, for example, without counting any relic or relic set, you think that you might not be able to pull off a high critical value, then get the critical gem. But if you're confident that once you put the relics, you're gonna have something around 70% critical chance or more, then you put the critical damage one. Depends on your relics, okay? You just put your relics, and after using, your relic set and everything, if you are under 70% crit, you put the one that increases the critical chance. But if you're on 70% crit or more, you put the one that increases the critical damage. You're gonna see why when we get to the relic part. And I'm explaining this before the relic part because this is way easier than the relic section. So yeah. Now for the rare gem at level 15, I will recommend you to put the one that gives speed. What is that one? Let me show you. It's this one. The one that has a little boot with the wing there. Yeah, this one. Increase the speed of your character, and that is gonna come in handy when we get to the relic section as well for one specific synergy that I'm gonna tell you. For now, just put this gem. If you don't have it or you don't want, then go and put the one that increases the attack for the same reason the other one that I told you. You're gonna increase the shock value, the shock damage and all of that. And for the last gem, the class specialized gem, I will recommend you to go for, let me show you here, the specialized class for the Rangers. That is exactly this one right here, the Power Gem Assist Rate. At max level increases your assist rate by 15%, and at the lowest level is by 1.5%, like the one that I have here, and at level 2 at 3.5%, which is really, really nice. And you can see it here, the lowest level 1.5%. So that will help your aura because your aura already deals, assist attacks. So you will have a little bit more of a chance of having her, dealing extra damage. Now, the tricky part. This is the relic section now. As you can see here, I do have a Bermare set on her, but I will recommend you either this or a Termination set. And the game recommends you Desolation Crimson Arm Bermare. To begin with, I would not recommend Crimson set because it increases the attack and the special effect that deals extra damage to all the initial targets cannot crit, and she is a crit based character. So that's a counter synergy. That's not recommended at all. The game recommends you Desolation set because this Desolation has a lot of effect precision that allows her to easily put shock on the enemies and also gives her a chance of putting burn and bleed on the enemies. But because I will not recommend to play Aura without any other shock team member, you're not gonna need Desolation because your other character is gonna be the one in charge of putting shock on the enemy, not Aura. But if you're gonna play Aura alone without any shock team member, maybe Desolation is a decent option. But otherwise, I would recommend you this one, Termination set. Depending on the quality of your set, is gonna give you critical chance from 10 to 15%, and she's gonna be able to nullify from 20 to 30% of the enemy defense. So that's a lot. Not only she's gonna be having more chances of dealing critical damage to the enemy, but she directly, skips or directly nullifies enemy defense. And the Vermari set right here also gives you critical chance, 15% at the max quality set, and gives you 40% chance to reduce the skill cooldown by 1 round after the skill. So every time you use the double arrow that stuns the enemy or the ultimate, you have a chance of reducing one cooldown of that skill or the other. So you maybe, for example, can use this set, max the double arrow skill and spam it because it has one round of cooldown. And if you use that skill and the Vermari set activates and the ultimate is not on cooldown, like your first move was the double arrow, then by the next turn you already have the double arrow again. That means another almost guaranteed stun on the enemy that is gonna put shock on them, and more likely is gonna trigger shock and deal critical damage on them. So that's why I recommend Vermare. And also, if you don't like the double arrow, synergy is with the ultimate. The ultimate is also gonna be faster, is gonna be available more often than usual, and it's more area of effect damage that puts shock on the enemy as well and can crit. Now, for the relic set, well, the relics on their own, not the sect effect. First off, I gotta clarify, she's not my main character or my main ranger, so I have quality set on her, yes, but it's not the biggest. It's not the best quality, you know? Still enough for her to work very good, and more than enough to show you what is good on her. Here you can see a champion helmet with B on critical damage, A on magical defense, A on speed, and S on crit. Here the best stats are critical chance, critical damage, and speed. Magical defense is, you know, used like an extra. Here on the Vermare leather armor we have more critical chance, more critical damage, attack, and magical defense. Vermare dagger gives you speed here, magical defense, critical chance, and effect precision, while the Vermare base that I have on her gives me more critical chance, attack, magical defense, and effect precision. Honestly, I tried to, you know, have a mix of mostly critical damage, critical chance, and magical defense, because a lot of the events and a lot of the enemies that you're gonna face on the game deal magical damage, and the teams and compositions I play Aura in are not exactly the best teams to protect her from enemy mages and area of effect attacks. So that was like a personal choice. But if I were to recommend you, you know, the priorities on your attributes is gonna be your number one priority, critical chance, your number two, critical damage, your number three is gonna be speed, and your number five could be, sorry, your number four could be either effect precision or magical defense, and your five is gonna be health or attack, whatever of those. And I'm gonna be showing you here a little bit more of an example, a better example. This is a termination set. The stats that you're gonna be seeing here are both for both sets, are equally good for a Vermare set and for a termination set. You can see here one S on speed, one S on critical chance, and a little bit of health. We can ignore the effect resistance there. Here we can see another really good one. A on attack, B on critical chance, S on speed, S on physical defense. Here more of the same, A on physical defense, but the important parts here are S on attack, A on critical damage, A on critical chance. And the base here has B on attack, A on damage boost, speed, and effect resistance. Honestly, looking at Aura and seeing how her stats are, we already saw that she, attacking enemies with shock, has already a 48% basic chance of critting on the enemy. If we add the 15% critical chance from either Vermare set or termination set, it's gonna be like 63% critical chance against targets with shock. 63%. That means that you only need 7% more on, you know, 7% on your relics, either the sub attribute or the enhancement, to be able to almost all the time crit on the enemies, because 70% is already a very high percentage for a ranger to crit on the enemy. But if you want to, you know, fully get into it, try to get her basic stat to 70%. Let me show you right here if it loads. Here on the overview, try to get her in the battle attributes below the basic attributes. Try to get her here to 70%. I have her on 84, but try to get her to 70. Why? Because the battle attribute does not count the extra crit that the passive gives her. So if you get 70 on the battle attributes, when you get on a match and you attack an enemy with shock, it's gonna have that 70% from the battle attribute plus the 30% from the lightning mastery. So you're gonna have a total of 100%. You're gonna have guaranteed critical hits all the time on the enemy, all the time. And remember, you have 10% from the accessories, you have 80% from the arc light, that is 18%. Then from that 18%, try to get like 52, yeah, like 52% critical chance. Try to get it with the relics. 52 minus this 15%, you already have way more than that. Let me do the math for a little moment. You have the 18 from the arc light and the accessory tier level 9 plus 10% from the Vermari or termination set. That is going to be like 28% plus 5% that I'm missing here. It's going to be like 33%. You're going to have like 33% with that out of 70. You're almost halfway there. So you're going to need like 37. You're going to need like 37% critical chance from your 4 relic pieces in the sub-attribute category and the enhancements. So you're gonna be able to maximize aura potential, okay? So if you have, for example, this 9.5% here critical chance plus another 5% here, you can get here another 7.5% plus 5.5% plus the extra crit from the awakening levels. I'm pretty sure you can get to 70% critical chance without the relic enhancements. So yeah, my recommendation is try to get in the battle attribute to 70% critical chance on aura. So on the battlefield, when you attack enemies with shock, she's guaranteed to deal critical damage. Now, for the relic enhancements, I'm gonna be giving you this example right here. Let me show you. Here, one of your main, well, not one, your main relic enhancement here is gonna be the unstoppable one. From level 1 to 5 increases your critical damage, just like Aura passive skill, just like Aura arc light. But here from level 6 to level 10 also gives you assistance rate. Exactly like the special class gem on the awakening levels, just like the accessories tier level 3. So you're gonna be able to boost the potential of Aura to not only deal more critical damage than usual, but also of doing more assist attacks. Combined with that, I will also recommend you the Hot Pursuit enhancement because it increases the damage of chase or assist attacks. And I have here like level 3 is 43% more attack on your chases and assist. From level 1 is going to be 13% more damage, and level 5, that is the maximum one, is going to deal a chase or assist attacks with additional damage equal to 80% attack and nullifies 40% of the defense, just like a termination set. So with this, you're going to be boosting your aura a ton because her assist attacks are going to deal more damage than usual. This even affects when shock triggers. So if she attacks on an assist attack, an enemy that already had shock and she puts shock again is going to trigger it, and the additional damage from this also transposes to the shock triggering effect. Now, if you got unlucky with the relics or anything and weren't able to get to the 70% crit on the battle attributes, you can also get punch for punch here because it's going to increase the critical chance and damage boost. And damage boost increases all kinds of damage on your character. But your main priority is always going to be unstoppable. Unstoppable plays into the best qualities of aura. Then you can go for something like Hot Pursuit. And let me find it, or let me see if I have it here. I do not have it here. So let me quickly go into another character that I think it has that. But it's gonna be the shock special enhancement. No, I do not have it here, but here is the other one. I'm gonna find it eventually. But here, as your other relic enhancement recommendation for my part is gonna be the one hit kill, increases the area of effect damage from the skills from 5 all the way to 30% depending on the level. So this is only gonna increase the damage from your ultimate, but your ultimate can already do 220% damage to one target and 160% to the other targets. So with one hit kill, you're gonna have more damage than usual, which is really nice. And you're gonna be having more of a one-shot potential with the ultimate skill. Now, let me see if I have it right here. Yeah, here I have it right here. And the last relic enhancement is gonna be Thunderous Surge. This is the shock specialized enhancement that I said. If the target has shock, the target takes 10% increased critical damage, and that value can go from 10 to 20 to 32 to 46%, and at max level, the target takes 60% increased critical damage and 20% increased critical chance for the user. So this enhancement looks like it was made for Aura, for this version of Aura specifically. So what do I recommend you? I recommend you Unstoppable because increases the critical damage. I recommend you one hit kill to increase the damage from the ultimate. I recommend you Thunderous Surge, so if the enemy has shock, they're gonna take increased critical damage. I also recommend you, here is Unstoppable, you can see. I also recommend you Punch for Punch if you're struggling with critical chance. And if you still have room for more enhancements, go for Unerring Shot, so you get more effect precision. But you can replace that with the Hot Pursuit that I told you earlier, so our assist attacks deal more damage. So yeah, with that will be like, you're increasing her critical damage, you're increasing her damage on the ultimate, her critical damage on targets with shock, and you're also giving her more damage on her assist attacks. All of that plays into her skill set and is really nice. Now, you can see here that my aura has only 28k combat power, 4 stars, and her arc light is 1 star. Her accessories are not max level, her skills are not max level, as you can see here, only the passive skill is max level. She doesn't have awakening level or gems, and her skill, sorry, her relic set is not as good as the relic set of my other characters like Maid Albedo or the SSR Entoma. You can think that she may be weak, but she's not weak at all, at least not for me. I can still use Aura even with this combat power level on high level, late game matches like on the multiplayer or the Realm of Shadows and still get a good performance out of her. So you can also do the same, and I'm gonna prove it. When I get to the practical part of the guide, that is gonna be the next video about this character, I'm gonna go to the arena and show you this aura against different teams and compositions, and you're gonna look how this aura with this combat power level is gonna be able to wreck the enemies. But now, that section is done. Now the last section, the teams and compositions to play with aura. First off, I'm gonna go with a max damage team for aura, and that is a brutish max damage team, like to only increase her damage and nothing else. And that team is gonna include this Hamuska right here, the tank version, and mostly because of his passive, her passive. Her passive gives a lot of things, but one of them is that adds true damage equal to certain percentage of her physical defense to all the allies, and her ultimate can put a high tier defense down on the enemy, lowers their physical defense by 40%, so Aura will deal more physical damage. Other character is gonna be this big team right here, because this big team with the passive increases every one attack based on his own attack and health. So you have another increase there, and then this is gonna be this anniversary bed on the team. Not only because she is a healer, she provides also shields and all of that, but she can steal buff from the enemies and give it to the ally with the highest attack. In this case, it's going to be either Victim or this Aura. She also gives critical damage resistance boost, so she doesn't get deleted by something like Seshi or Momon. And her passive skill also gives, debuff immunity, invincibility, high tier effect resistance boost. She also gives turn meter boost and all of that to someone that is about to die. So even if the enemy is heavily focused on killing your albedo is gonna keep her alive, and because it's gonna make her invincible for a while, your aura is gonna be, having free reign to attack and kill the enemies. And the ultimate also gives turn meter boost, the indomitable effect, so she gets harder to kill, debuff immunity, and high tier critical damage boost. So you can combine all the critical damage increases from her passive skill, from her arc light, from the relic sub attributes, as well as the relic enhancements, plus this 45% critical damage from albedo, and you're gonna be having your aura dealing tons of damage if the regardless if the enemy has shock or if the enemy doesn't have shock inflicted on them. So that is the max damage for aura. It's gonna be physical damage, I mean. Now, other teams or characters that you can combine with this aura are critical damage based characters. Like what? Like this Momon, both versions of Momon in fact. Like the other version of aura that we have on the game, the original one. Like, for example, let me find it. Like Seshi here, No Death No Life. Like Nigredo here. Like this Entomatra I show you for the relics. Like also the Metal Bell right here. All of these characters that deal high critical damage and have high critical chance, they combine with this Aura. Why? Because all of these characters either deal assist attacks or chase attacks. And that means that you can use one of these high damage characters to harass the enemy, and Aura will have an easier time just finishing them off because these characters have high speed. So Aura will play Aura will play after them once the enemies are low in health, so she's gonna be able to kill them. Or if she's not able to kill them with her high critical damage, she's gonna be able to stun them. So when they get stunned, they lose their opportunity to retaliate on your team, and your next round you just kill them. And that includes combining those critical damage characters with something like Pestonia. Not only because she's a healer and everyone wants a healer on their team, but also because she gives turn meter boost of 100%. She instantly gives another turn to your team, to your member, to the specific member that you choose. And she reduces the cooldown of a random skill by 1 round. So your Pestonia can, give Aura another turn after your other ranger damages the enemy. Your Aura failed at killing it, then your Pestonia gives another turn to Aura and maybe restores her ultimate cooldown so she can finish multiple enemies on a single attack. You can combine that with something like this Hamuski as the tank to increase everyone's attack. So you have a team that focuses on critical damage, and all of them have the synergy with Aura because they increase her own damage or give her a specific benefit, like in this case the turn meter boost. Another team that you can combine with Aura is a control team. A control team, includes something like Saryusu right here. Like this guy, with the ultimate skill, he can freeze the enemies, or well, at the start of the game he can only freeze one. But if you have high effect precision on him, or if you can play Saryusu multiple times or make him counter the enemy attacks, he can get really really good results and freeze multiple enemies at the same time or on the same turn and round. And by freezing the enemies, they cannot get a turn. Their move comes in, but they cannot throw any skill or any basic attack because they're frozen. So they basically lose a turn. With that, you're controlling the pace of the game. You decide when the enemy plays, when the enemy doesn't play, and that is just one character. Another character that can go there is Victim. He can stun multiple enemies, or if the enemies are already stunned, he extends the stun duration. If you want a tank that controls, you have Albedo. She can taunt multiple enemies at the same time. She counters and can taunt enemies when she counters. So the enemies are forced to attack her and only her during the turn that they are taunted. So your aura is safe because the enemies are not going to be able to hit her. And this Hamuski right here also can stun the enemy and throw their turn meter back. So the enemies lose a turn and they have to wait longer than usual to even get the turn in which they're not going to be able to play. Plus this aura can stun. So Just to give you a basic team, right? This aura, as the ranger, is gonna be able to stun one enemy. Then you can put this Ariusu to freeze one enemy. But the longer the game goes, he can go from freezing one enemy to freezing two, three, or four. But let's say let's give him an average performance. He can freeze two enemies. So you're in a multiplayer match, Sarius is gonna be able to freeze two enemies. Aura is gonna be able to stun a third enemy, and that leaves the enemy with only one remaining character that is not under control effect. Then your albedo can taunt it. So all of the enemy team are under control effects and they cannot play. Or you can use Nigredo to silence the enemy or extend the duration of a stun or the freeze. Or you can use Seshi to stun it with the ultimate, or Hamusuke to stun it with the second skill, or Big Team to stun them with the ultimate or with his death as well. If you don't like that, you have Yaldabaoth that is able to taunt the enemies from one-on-one. You don't like that? Well, you have Pestonia. Every time Pestonia heals one ally, the next ally attack is gonna silence the enemy, so they're not gonna be able to throw any attack. You don't like that? Well, the Murge is also a control character. He can stun multiple enemies if he has good effect precision. You don't like that? Well, you have this Shasuri right here is able to stun the enemies. You don't like that? Well, you have Yuri to stun one enemy, or you have this solution to silence another enemy. So yeah, all of these characters are able to stun or control the enemy. Even the PDL here is able to stun someone. So, with these teams, you control the pace of the game. You stun or taunt or freeze or silence multiple enemies, so they do not get a turn to play and retaliate and kill your team. That way, the enemy is frustrated. NPC or real player is gonna be frustrated because they cannot get to play. They cannot get to choose what skills they're gonna do, and your aura is gonna have all the time in the world to kill them, either slowly and painfully, or fast and very, very gruesome. She's gonna be able to land a lot of damage, and because the enemies are stunned, the enemies are more likely not gonna be able to purify the shock effects from aura. And if they are not able to purify shock, that means that Aura is gonna land more critical damage than usual. She's gonna do more critical hits than usual, and she's gonna be constantly triggering shock on the enemy, and that is gonna give her 2 meter boost. That means that even when the enemies are under control effects, Aura is gonna be speeding through them and getting a turn before the enemies get a turn. So with that, you have everything under control. The enemies cannot play, and you can kill them in the order that you want, as slow or as fast as you can or as you want. Another theme that you can use is, and that is the very obvious one, that's why I left that theme at last, is the shock theme. And that includes things like this this Entoma right here, the SR version of Entoma, the original Entoma. That also includes characters like the Nave, the adventure version, this one right here, or let me see, the Narveral version, the original Narveral, the made one, and also includes something like the PDL, this one right here. The PDL also puts shock on the enemy with the second skill. The synergy here is that basically you use all the other characters to put shock on the enemy, so the enemy is inflicted with shock, and when the turn of Aura comes in, the first turn, she's gonna be able to land a heavy hit with the ultimate on everyone, and is gonna proc shock on all of the enemies at the same time, and because it procs shock on them, she's gonna be able to get a 2 meter increase, so she's gonna be playing faster than usual. She's always gonna have critical hits on the enemies, and she's gonna be constantly triggering shock on them. So even if the enemies doesn't die from critical hits, they're gonna die from shock. And if you don't like the Aura Captain skill with this Narveral on play on the battlefield, you can use this Captain skill instead, that says that enemies with shock have magical defense reduced. It's not exactly gonna be the best for your Aura because your Aura deals physical damage, but it's gonna be really good for shock to increase their own damage. And if you play something like this Narveral, Entoma, the PDL, and Aura, it's gonna increase the damage from Narveral and Entoma. So even if the enemy tries to focus on your Aura and kill her, thinking that is the main carry, you still have other two characters that deal high damage. But the captain skill is up to you, whatever you prefer. And if you don't like it for the PDL as part of your shock team, instead of the PDL, I would recommend you to play Cicita, this version right here, the tank version of Cicita, specifically because of the Fire Owl skill. The Fire Owl gives you and does a lot of things, but the important part here for the synergy is that the targets in coordinated lock or tracking beacon debuff, that is what she puts with the ultimate, deal less damage to her. So she's the tank and she's gonna be able to perform support. So she's gonna be protecting your aura from all the single target attacks. And the enemies in the same coordinated lock debuff deal less damage and take 20% more magical damage. So you're gonna be able to use your mages to weaken the enemy and your aura to finish them off. So your tank can either be Cicita or the PDL, and your other characters for the shock team can be Entoma, the SR version, or Narveral, the mage version, or Nave, the adventure version with aura. Now, what I will do is put a team Cicita, Entoma, Narveral, and aura, and that will be the best shock team for me. As I did already a video showing you why is the best shock team, and you can look it up with the same name. But here you have the variation of Nave, this Nave in fact. If you use the first team, that is Cicita, Entoma, Narveral, and Aura, your first turn is gonna be Cicita. She's gonna play first, she's gonna put a debuff on the enemies, she's gonna make them receive more magical damage, and her battle supplies also increase the damage of one ally. And the battle supplies here, right? In is here the ammo pack increases attack and damage deal by 12% for one round, stackable for 2 times. So she the first turn of all your characters, as long as they don't have a special debuff as an advantage like bleed from Cocytus, they're gonna have the ammo supply that is gonna increase their damage by 12%. So you use Cicita to debuff all the enemies to make them more vulnerable to receive magical damage. You can even put her captain skill to make the enemies have less magical defense and your team have more magical defense. But if you want, you can keep Aura captain skill however you want. But your CC that is gonna play first. It's gonna debuff the enemies, make them more vulnerable. Then you're gonna have Entoma. With this Entoma, you're gonna throw the ultimate, so she's gonna get a boost with her Arclight that is gonna give her attack boost and is gonna increase the damage of her next skill by 20%. You combine that with her second skill, the Thunderbird Talisman, that is going to be magical damage equal to 100% of her attack, all of her attack, to all the enemies, and has 100% basic chance of putting shock on the enemies. Here is, badly written, but you have the chance of putting shock on the enemies. Here it is. That lasts for 2 rounds after dealing damage. So she's gonna be dealing high damage to all the enemies that are CC already weakened, and she's gonna put shock on them. Then you're gonna be playing this Narveral right here. Regardless of the captain skill, you're gonna be using this Narveral to either throw lightning to an enemy that already has lightning, so she attacks 2 enemies on a single turn and gets attack boost, that is an increase of attack of 30%. So by the next round, she's gonna be able to throw an ultimate that is gonna deal a ton of damage, or you can try to rush the enemy and throw the ultimate after Entoma turn, and because Entoma already put shock on the enemy, she's gonna deal a ton of damage to the enemy, 110% of her attack, that can go all the way to 130%, and if she attacked the enemy with shock, that she's gonna do because Entoma put shock on them, she's gonna throw the lightning blast that is gonna do magical damage equal to the number of stacks of shock on all enemies multiplied by 30% of the attack of Narveral to all the enemies. So you're gonna be throwing like a grenade on them. You're gonna be throwing a nuke with her ultimate, and then you're gonna be throwing a grenade with that lightning effect. And then you're gonna be playing Aura as your last character, and you're gonna be able to decide whatever you want. You can stun one enemy with a double arrow, or you can try to kill the enemy with the thunder arrow, either the main target, or you can try to kill multiple by hitting in the center of the enemy team, so you damage 3 enemies at once. And Aura can trigger the shock effects, so you can kill multiple enemies, or at least heavily damage the enemies. So by the next round, you still have a lot of talismans on Entoma, you still have the extra damage from Narmerol, and you have still a lot of chances for Aura to do assist attacks and to kill the enemy. Either if you use the ultimate, you will have double arrow, or if you use double arrow, you still have the ultimate. So with that team, you have a lot of things covered. You have the characters that are gonna put shock. You have characters that are gonna deal a ton of magical damage. Others that are gonna do a ton of physical damage. There is gonna be Aura. She's gonna be able to crit because the enemies are gonna have shock. And you have a good tank that is Isita. Only thing you're gonna be missing is a healer. But if you want, you can put something like Pestonia or Anniversary Albedo for the features that I already told you, instead of either Narberal or Entoma, whatever you prefer. But there is another variant, like I said, this is going to be Sisita, Aura, but you can change either Entoma or Narberal for the other Nave. This Nave right here, the Adventure version. And basically, when the enemies are low on health, when they are below 40% HP, she's gonna deal 25% more damage, and she's gonna have 25% critical boost. And not only that, but if the target is below 30% health, she is gonna trigger the Phantom Duet, that is, a duplication of her ultimate, or well, her second skill as well. She's gonna use the skill that she used on the same turn on the enemy with the lowest health by dealing 50% of the original skill damage. So if the enemy was low on health and she threw the ultimate, and the enemy didn't die but remain on 30% health or less, she's gonna throw the ultimate again. Or if she throws the second skill, she's gonna be able to throw the second skill again. And she's able to put shock on the enemies with these skills. And also the second skill has this upgrade at level 5, that if the enemy is already inflicted with shock before this skill was cast, she's gonna have increased critical damage, combined with her ultimate that increases the critical damage and the critical chance when when she throws the ultimate. She's gonna be a finisher. That means that you don't need Aura to finish off the enemy. You can use Sisita to debuff the enemy, and either Entoma or Narberal to put shock on the enemies. Then you play Aura to do the heavy damage, the heavy critical damage on the enemies that is gonna trigger shock to deal even more damage. So hopefully the enemies are 50% health or even less. And then Nave plays, and when Nave plays, she throws either the second skill or the ultimate and kills one or more enemies. And if you get the speed stats the other way around and your Nave plays before your Aura, is the same. You use your Nave to throw the ultimate skill to heavily weaken one enemy, so when Aura turn comes in, she's gonna be able to finish it off. And if you finish off the enemy with the double arrow, she's gonna kill it with the first arrow, and the second one is gonna go to another enemy and is gonna stun that other enemy. So that is the synergy. And those will be all the teams that I will recommend you. The control team, the shock team, the critical damage team, and the max physical damage team. And that will be all for the teams and compositions for this Aura. The other last thing that I want to talk about is how to exploit your Aura individually, regardless of the team. And it's gonna be like this. You're gonna get her battle attribute to 70%. So when she attacks someone with shock, her passive skill is gonna guarantee her critical because it's gonna go to 100%. So after that, on your relics and everything that you have, you are gonna max her critical damage, her speed, and her effect precision, as well as her attack. If you were to choose, because maybe you are unlucky with the relics or anything like that, you have to choose only two things after crit, you're gonna be choosing critical damage and speed, even when she has S on attack. S on attack is only gonna influence your shock damage, and your critical damage is is different. Your critical damage doesn't depend exactly on your attack. Yeah, critical damage is 178.8% of your value on attack. That's right. But there are different stats that you can upgrade. You can upgrade more the attack or more the critical damage. If you upgrade more the critical damage, you're gonna be noticing that more on the battlefield with this Aura. But what is gonna happen especially when you upgrade her speed. Like you try to get her speed as if she was a character with Aeon speed. Like instead of 189, you try to get her to something like 200 and 220. Like this Entomata is 204, or you can get this Entomata has 220.98, or this Albedo 221.84. You're gonna have a character that is gonna move fast, regardless of if she procs the passive skill or not. She's gonna move fast. She's gonna hit all the time critical hits on the enemies. The critical hits are gonna be constantly proccing shock as secondary damage on the enemy. And the important part, if you combine that guaranteed crits with high speed with her passive skill, means that she's gonna have a performance very similar as if she was a character with S on speed. She's gonna move really fast. She's gonna have a lot of turns very quickly. You're gonna be able to spam the enemy with double arrows or with the ultimate, even more if you have Bear set on Aura. So that way you have a character that is gonna move really fast. It's gonna guarantee critical hits on the enemies, so it's gonna hit really hard, and it's gonna be constantly debuffing the enemy. The effect precision will only come in hand if you want to, play Aura without any other character that puts shock on the enemy, or if you want to play with this Aura around her stun. But if you don't want to play around that, and you are more inclined only on the critical damage, then you don't need effect precision. But for example, the shock team that I told you with Entoma, the Narvel versions, and Sisita, you don't need effect precision for shock, because your other characters are gonna put shock on the enemy. You only need a little bit of effect precision, so you have a chance of actually stunning all the enemies that you throw the double arrow. And that will be it, okay? That is the way to use the maximal potential of this aura, as well as, upgrading her skills and all of that. But yeah, now that I clarified that, this is the end, and that will be everything about this aura. So thanks for being here, hearing my awful voice, and just wait for the next part that is going to be the practical guide where I go to the arena mode and I fight in the multiplayer against multiple enemy teams and multiple compositions and show you all the teams that I use, from the control team to the shock team, the critical damage, or the max physical damage team. And that will be the last part, but that part is gonna be like either tomorrow or the day next to tomorrow. And yeah, thanks for watching here. And if you're thinking if this character is worth it, yeah, it is worth it. Is basically the best shock team member that is on the game, and is actually available right now. As you can see here, she has 2 remaining days before she goes away, so you still have 2 days to get this character, as well as her exclusive Arcolite. And not only that, we have the Tragicomic event right now, so that is the event where she gives you extra rewards, and the event that was used to introduce the character to the game. So yeah, this character is worth. It's not gonna be the best ranger of the game, but if you upgrade it and if you invest with relics and so on the character, it's gonna be one of the best rangers on the game. Especially if you combine that ranger with something like a good tank like Sisita tank, or a really good healer like Pestonia or Anniversary Albedo. So yeah, is a really good character. If I were to rate the character performance, is gonna be like a 9.2 out of 10, or a solid 9. So yeah, thanks for watching, and until the next time.